everyone, it's Bethany. Welcome back. This is week 8, the final week of this Cricut Summer Challenge. I hope you have had as much fun as I have had putting this together for you. In this final video today, we are going to be learning about how to make a stencil on the Cricut machine. This is really fun. This is also one of the most popular things that you can do when creating wooden signs. So what we're going to do is we're going to have fun creating a stencil, and I'll show you how to do that in Cricut Design Space, and then I'll show you how to cut it out on a stencil film. It's really, really easy. Be sure to give this a thumbs up if you are ready to start week 8 and creating a stencil. This is easy, fun, and I know you're going to be inspired to create your own this week. As you are creating, be sure to use the hashtag BethadillyInspired on Instagram. That way you can share what you're working on this week. All right, everyone, let's begin the last week. Okay, so we are going to make a little wooden sign today, and I found these at Michael's. They are really nice and they were really affordable. They come in a bare wood, and I believe they are 5 inches by 5 inches. Yes. And what I did is applied, I think, about 4 layers of my favorite chalk paint right to the surface. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a stencil so that I can do some lettering. And you can do this with vinyl, but I'm going to show you how you can create a stencil so that you can do a sign with paint. This is really easy, really fun to do, and I will walk you through each step. So let's go into Design Space. Now that we know how big our sign is, then we have all the information that we need, and we can start creating our stencil. Okay, in Cricut Design Space, I'm just in the canvas screen. I'm going to come over to the left, and on the second button from the bottom, it says Upload, and I'm going to click on Upload because I want to use a file that I have uploaded into Cricut Design Space. So I've already uploaded it. It is located right here, so I'll go ahead and click on it to select it, and then I will go down to the bottom right and say Add to Canvas, and then it will bring it into my canvas screen for me. Okay, so this is what I want to work with. Now what I want to do is come over to Shapes, and I want to select a square because I want to create my actual stencil here. And I want my stencil to be as big as my wooden blank. And I want this to be because then I don't have to tape off any area, and you will see that kind of play out as I cut this out and then apply it to my little sign for painting. So just stick with me, but I'm going to come up to size, and because my little wooden sign is 5 inches by 5 inches, I am going to make my stencil the same size, 5 inches by 5 inches. Okay, now what I'm going to do is let me go ahead and right click and bring this to front because I uploaded that first into Design Space, and so because I did it first, now it's the bottom layer. So I'm just going to right click and say bring to front. That way I can put this on top here. All right, now what I will do is I'm just going to go ahead, select all of this, see how it's multiple layers, and I'm just going to combine and weld that all together so that it is one layer. Okay, now there we go. I'm just going to start doing some sizing, and I'm going to unlock so that I can size the width and the height independently of one another because I just want to get that a little longer, and I think I like that. I think that looks really nice. So now what I want to do is the square is actually my stencil. Okay, and then the letters are what I'm going to cut out of my stencil. So it's kind of a reverse weeding situation here. We're going to be weeding in the opposite manner that we usually do. So it's really important here that I actually have my placement just right because I am creating the actual stencil. So I'm going to select everything, come up to Align, and let's say Center. I got it pretty aligned there. All right. I really do say my superpower is in eyeballing things. I don't know. It's one of the things I can do. So now what I want to do is I want to create the physical stencil. So let's go ahead and select everything. And what I want to do is cut the letters out of the square. Okay. So I selected everything, and I'm going to come down to this button and say Slice. Okay. So I'll go ahead and click that. And then you'll notice in your layers panel, there are 2 little layers with the letters, and you can peel off your original, and then you can remove your little area that you sliced out. These are what were sliced. So now we don't need either one of these, so we can just select them, delete, and now we have our actual stencil. Easy peasy. Okay, we are all ready to go. So now what I can do is verify the machine I'm using, and I am using my Explorer 3, so I'm good to go there. And now I can say make it. On the mat preview screen, it's just showing us where we're going to have it placed on the cutting mat, and that all looks good to me, so we can say continue. And then on the final cutting screen, what I'm going to do is select the material I want to cut out with my Cricut. So I'm going to browse all materials, and I am going to come all the way down to, I think, the vinyl section. And there should be a setting for a stencil vinyl. There it is, right down at the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to select stencil vinyl. Now I'm not using a Cricut stencil vinyl. I'm using a different brand that I really like, and I'll link it down in the description box below, but I'll use this cut setting. I'll select done, and then all we'll need is our fine point blade and clamp B, and we're all set. Okay, I'm going to move my little sign to the side, bring in my standard grip mat. You could also use your light grip mat if you would like to. And I am going to place some stencil vinyl right down on the mat. So this is the stencil vinyl that I am using. I really like it. Again, it'll be linked down below. And this blue is the actual stencil, and then it's on a cutting mat. So it's kind of like a vinyl, right? It's just a stencil vinyl. Okay, so I'm just going to get that just so, and there we go. I am just going to let that hang off of my mat. That's just fine. And now we can open our Cricut machine and load our mat. Okay, there we go. Double arrows to load, and then it will measure our mat. Okay, it's all set. Making sure it's just all pressed down really nicely. Press play to start. Okay, now it's finishing up by just cutting out our 5-inch box that surrounds our design. And now we can unload. Okay, close up my machine, and I'm going to flip my mat over and make sure that I gently peel the mat away from my stencil vinyl. And what I'll do is locate and trim out my design. Okay, we are all set. So here is our stencil. How easy was that? Now what I'm going to do is begin weeding, and we're going to weed a little differently than we normally do. Well, the actual process is still the same. However, instead of weeding our surrounding area, we are going to weed the letters, because every place that we remove from our stencil is going to be where we will put the paint. So think of it that way. Wherever you want paint, you want to create an opening. So I'm going to just start by weeding out my letters. Just like that. Okay. And I'll place a link to this SVG in case you like it as well. One of the great things about finding fun designs too is that you can make anything you'd like out of the design. So if you wanted to do a t-shirt or a tote bag or a coffee mug, or in my case, a wooden sign with a stencil, you can do that. Okay, I'm collecting all my little letters over here. Oh, it's getting a sticky mess. And let's grab this. Okay. There we go. Being gentle, because you don't want to remove the little middles. You want the middle of your D, the middle of your little S here, and the R, the O. You want those to stay in there. Okay, we are all set. So here is our stencil. Now, I want you to also remember that you do not need stencil vinyl to do this. If you have a removable vinyl, you can do this with a removable vinyl. So sometimes if I have vinyl that I don't necessarily love, for example, maybe the color came in and I didn't quite anticipate it being the color that it ended up being, or if it was, you know, a part of a big pack and I didn't really like the particular pattern, then what I will do is just set that to the side and then I can use that for stencils. But you want to make sure that it is a removable. So check your stash before you buy stencil vinyl, but also the stencil vinyl is a really great one to have in your stash. Okay, now I'm going to grab some transfer tape because I want to transfer my stencil over to my wood sign. Okay, I have a piece of transfer tape. And actually, I'll just peel the whole thing off. Now, what I want to do is make sure, I'll bring that over a little bit, that it covers my entire design. Just like that. Okay, perfect. Now what the transfer tape is doing is it's allowing us to peel up the stencil from this little white cutting sheet that's on the back so that we can transfer it over to whatever we are stenciling. Okay, I'm gonna grab a scraper and burnish down the top. Okay, and then I'm going to turn this around and burnish the back. Okay, now with it face down on my craft mat, I'm going to peel away that white cutting sheet, leaving my stencil right on my transfer tape. There we go. Okay. Oh, the sweet sounds of air conditioning. I think I told you in one of my videos, our air conditioning went out for a couple days, and oh my goodness, I will always be thankful for the little quiet hum of the air because that was warm. Okay, again, I made my stencil the exact size of my blank. Now this is great for two reasons, right? It covers the entire thing so that I am covering all of the areas that I don't want paint on, but also because I aligned it perfectly and centered it on my stencil, I know that as long as I line this up on my wood sign, it's going to be centered, okay? So that's how I like to do it. You, of course, can do it however you wish. Okay, there we go. And there we go. Lay that down and burnish once more. Okay, now I'm very gently going to take a corner and remove my transfer tape. And now I have my stencil right on my sign. Okay, and then I'm going to place this right back on the sheet so I can reuse it for another project. Now, because I was peeling up that transfer tape, I want to make sure that I come back through and really make sure my little stencil is laid down. And I don't want to do it with a scraper because I don't want to disrupt the edges. I don't want to push and then, you know, ruin the vinyl. You don't want to run a scraper over exposed vinyl because it doesn't glide over it nicely like it does glide over transfer tape. Okay, so I'm going to bring in my brayer tool, and this is where I'm just going to really take my time adding some pressure to make sure that my stencil is laid down really, really nice. We don't want the paint to get underneath the stencil because we want nice crisp lines. Okay, whoops, there we go. I think that should be just fine. Okay, I'm going to use a really nice little kind of sage green. I think that'll be pretty, but before I do that, I am going to use the chalk paint that I painted my background with first. And I'm going to do this to kind of seal the stencil. And the reason why is because if for any reason there is a little part of the stencil that is coming up, then if we have any paint get under the stencil on the initial paint layer, we want that to match our background. Does that make sense? So if anything is going to bleed through or get under the stencil, it's going to be that first layer. So if it's white, then it's going to match the background. Now this doesn't need to be thick, okay? This just needs to cover it. Okay, so just a nice thin coat. We're just sealing that stencil. Okay. Here we go. And I just use a little foam brush when I'm doing this. It works for me, but go ahead and use whatever applicator you like the best. Okay. And there is one little problem area right here, but I'm just going to make sure that that is sealed with the white paint and we should be good. And if not, you do touch-up paint, and that's completely fine too. Okay, so I am going to set that to the side, close this up, and with a hairdryer on cold, I'm going to just dry this really quickly. So I have my little hairdryer here, and I'm gonna do cold. Make sure that this is nice and shaken. I don't know, this was in my stash. I do not know that I have used this color. Okay, I'm just gonna put it on a block here. Okay. And this one little piece, I think I'm just going to note that I will probably end up doing a touch up there, and that's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna grab a little bit of paint and I'm going to do several thin layers. Okay, so let's just start with our first layer. And as you can see, because I made my stencil the same size as my sign, now you can visually see how that helps mask off and protect my entire sign. If you wanted to, you know, preserve stencil material and make your stencil smaller, then you could just use painter's tape around the perimeter. That's totally fine too. I have more stencil vinyl than I know what to do with because it comes in such a big roll, and I bought it 2 years ago. So a little extra inch or two, I'm not worried about with this product. Okay, drying on cold. Okay, and going in with my next layer. So again, multiple light layers, and you can decide, you know, how many layers you want to do based on the look you're going for. So I may stop at 2, but if you wanted it to be super, super solid, then you could do that too. I kind of like that more distressed look, because I'll probably end up distressing my wood sign, so I like that look for my paint as well. When you have a little bit less perfection and less, you know, not as solid with your paint, then it kind of looks a little more distressed, which I like. Okay, let me try that and see where I'm at. Okay, just for good measure, I like the 2 layers, but let's just add the 3rd. Let's just make it very solid. It's actually very relaxing to do. Oh, and I used every little drop of that paint. It makes me always feel so good. Okay, I'll dry that. In fact, I'm going to actually leave that wet because I kind of like to do a wet peel for that final one. Okay, just seems like it comes off a little bit easier. Now, I'm going to use a weeding tool just to kind of help get little pieces up. If you scratch your wood blank with your weeding tool, it'll be okay. Just use your touch-up paint. Oh, that looks good. Okay, now the trick here, however, is that's that area that had it bleed. That's okay. I was anticipating that. The trick here is not getting the paint on your fingers, because if you get paint on your fingers and then touch your sign, it gets really, really messy in a hurry. So just be aware. Okay, so I'm just keeping a little wet wipe on hand to make sure I am keeping my fingers all clean. Grabbing all these little pieces, and I'm placing them right in the trash. That way I don't get paint everywhere. There we go. And honestly, it is looking pretty good. I will do some touch-up, but I'm liking it. I like this color too. It's really fun. Making sure that my weeding tool stays paint-free as well. Okay, I did my final one. I'm going to give myself a really good little wet wipe bath real quick. Okay, all clean. And now we are ready to do a little touch-up. Okay, and I'm just going to grab more of a precision paintbrush here to do my little touch-up. And just perfect those little areas that got a little boogered. So we are on the final week of the challenge, and I am just really interested in knowing which was your favorite week. It could be your favorite because you found yourself really challenged that week. It could be your favorite because you ended up creating your favorite project that week. Let me know which week was your favorite. Okay, I think I'm happy with my little touch-ups. That is so fun. So I hope this was helpful to learn how to create a stencil with your Cricut machine. This is a really fun project. I think it's really nice, and it's really actually relaxing to do. I find that it encourages you to really be still and focused, and I love that about this particular project. All right, everyone, please be sure to share what you end up making with stencils this week, and please be sure to use that Bethadilly inspired hashtag over on Instagram. That way we can see what you were inspired to create this week. I have had so much fun these past 8 weeks with you. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Please be sure again to tell me what your favorite week was or your favorite project that you created was, because I would just love to hear it. All right, everyone, be sure to give this a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and enjoyed this whole series, and I will see you all next time.